On June 23rd, 2004, the worst tragedy of my life happened. It was the day that my oldest sister, Capehart, died in a single-car accident on I-24 headed to class at Middle Tennessee State University. It was early morning, around 9 a.m., when I received a call from my youngest sister, who at the time was just a teenager. I was working a part-time job at a restaurant in Nashville on Broadway. When I answered the phone, I immediately heard screaming and crying in the background. This was the call that many of us regret ever receiving. My youngest sister, who called crying and screaming as she tried to tell me what was going on. I can't imagine how hard it must have been for her to make that phone call. She said, "Kiki's dead. She's dead. Kiki's dead. She's dead." At that moment, I felt my entire body go into shock. My heart began to beat so fast that I thought that even I was about to die. My body felt heavy. I felt too weak to stand, but somehow I mustered up the strength to reply to my sister, "Okay, I'll be home soon." As soon as I hung up the phone, I stumbled a few feet away from where I was standing before collapsing onto the sidewalk as I began to weep. I'm not sure how much time passed after I collapsed, but I remember a man who appeared to be homeless touching me on my shoulder and telling me, "It's going to be all right." That's when I came to pick myself up and make my way to my mother's house. The first person I called was my friend Patience. I called Patience because she lived close by in an apartment complex that I lived in too. I also called Patience because I needed someone to give me a ride to my family. After a few minutes passed, Patience arrived, and when she got there, she was trying to hold back tears as she tried to console me in my worst moment. As we made our way to my mother's house, not a single word was spoken. All I remember was crying and weeping. The ride to my mother's house was about 15 minutes, and when we got there, the first people I saw were two state troopers standing outside my mother's door, and that's when the reality began to settle in. I was now face to face with the worst tragedy of my life. It was a perfect nightmare. My older sister had died minutes after dropping my mother, my grandmother, and my aunt off at the airport as they all traveled to Jamaica to celebrate my mother's birthday, which was just 4 days away. My sister traveled on Interstate 24 headed east when her tire tread fell off and began to unravel and eventually got stuck in the wheel axle, causing her car to overturn and roll several times and eventually off the highway. Before the car had come to a stop, my sister's body had been ejected nearly 100 feet away from her car. A woman driving behind my sister witnessed the entire accident, and she recalled what she had just witnessed on a call to 911. Listening to the audio of the woman's call, I could hear in her voice how scared she was for my sister. My heart sank when the woman mentioned the car seat that she noticed flying out of the car. I thank God that my niece wasn't in the car that day. Otherwise, this perfect nightmare could have been worse. So here I am at home listening to state troopers as they began to tell me what had occurred. They asked me, "Are you related to Capehart?" And with a sense of pride, I lifted my head and I replied, "Yes, I am her brother." They went on to inform me of what had occurred and that my sister had died in an accident on the highway. They told me that since I was the oldest next of kin, I needed to identify her body. There I stood, a 23-year-old man, just graduated from college a month before and excited about the future, but broken by the tragic loss of my sibling. I went from an emotional high point to an unimaginable low point. I wanted my older sister to be in charge of the situation as normal, but she was gone. I wanted so bad for my mother to hold me as I cried, but she was unavailable and wouldn't be home for the next 2 days because she was hospitalized in a Jamaican hospital. The news of her first child dying was too devastating for her to board a plane and come home. In that moment, I needed to be courageous enough to face my older cousin who was responsible for watching my 3 teenage sisters and my 2-year-old niece whose mother had just died. Like I said, it was a perfect nightmare. As the days passed, I had to find new reasons to live. I had to find a new hope for a brighter day. My pain had gotten so severe that the thought of my own death wasn't such a bad thing. Have you ever been in that place? My sister's funeral was packed with hundreds of friends and family members who all came to pay respect and mourn our loss. Unknowingly to me, some of the people who came were able to find strength by watching me handle my pain. Somehow, seeing me in the valley of the shadow of death inspired someone else to live through their own pain. Coping with loss has taught me that life is harder than hard. But life is also rewarding to those who can endure the worst of circumstances. Exactly 12 years and 3 days ago was the worst day of my life. Tragedy struck my family. And even now, as I continue to cope with my loss, I know that my relationship and my belief in God kept me in my darkest days. Throughout the years since my family's loss, we've been able to help others deal with their pain in an authentic way. Helping others deal with their pain has been rewarding because every person's story gives me new hope and inspiration to keep up my good fight. Perhaps these are the prizes of pain. As the years passes and my family continues to cope and heal, I've come to realize that coping with loss is a personal process that's different for everyone. Going through my pain has made me wiser. My pain has made me stronger. 12 years and 3 days later, I'm stronger, I'm wiser, and I'm better. Surely, this is the prize of pain. Looking back, I wish someone would have told me that there would be a prize for my pain.